Hello, my name is Julie, and today my TBR is headed for sudden death. If you haven't been following me for a while, you might not know that I have been actively trying to just fix my TBR. In one of my most recent videos, I shared with you that I had been predicting what I was going to rate every single book that I read for an entire year, trying to figure out if I was actively picking up books that I didn't think I was going to like. And I got a lot of data out of that and several goals to work on going forward. I even started a Reels series called Unf Our Shelves to try to hold myself to making those goals work. So if you'd like to check out that prediction video and come back, which I am extremely proud of, and I think it's totally worth a watch, you can check that out here before I spoil some of my findings. Are they gone? Okay, so I found out that I was pretty good at predicting what I was going to rate a book beforehand. One of the main things about that was no book that I predicted was going to be a 3.5 star or lower, I gave a 5-star. I also found that books that I own were getting rated lower than books that I got out from the library, because I was only picking out library books that I was interested in, but I still had some books that had fallen stale on my TBR, and I felt bad getting rid of them. Specifically those books that I got cheap, used, or free. So today, I have picked 30 books off of my TBR that I don't think I have sampled, or I don't think I'm going to like as much as others, and I'm going to read the first pages or chapter of all of those books. I'm going to tier rank them, and I'm going to get rid of the books that I think I am not going to like based on that sample. So we're going to read the first pages or chapter of 5 books at a time and get back to you on what I think of each group of 5. I have 30 books to get through, so we got 6 rounds to do, from most recent acquisition to least recent. And not all of these books I have on me right now because my books are spread out, so some of these I'm going to be reading the digital sample that I can find. So let's grab my first 5 books, which are going to be 2666 by Roberto Bolaño, Blue Sisters by Coco Malors, My Darlings by Maurice Still, You're Invited by Amanda Giatessa, and All the Colors of the Dark, which I do not have on me. Let's try them out. This is a book that was on the top 10 of the New York Times Best Books of the Century so far list, and that's why I was interested in it. And I know somebody else who read it and ended up loving it. Synopsis of this book is very broad, and so it doesn't really give me a great idea of the book, but the first chapter, or I don't know if it's volume, is listed. The part about the critics split into 5 volumes, it looks like. It's kind of reading like a classic just off the bat. So did not get an immediate great feeling off of the writing style immediately, but also not a bad one. This is just going to take a lot of brain power to read. Then Blue Sisters, immediate great vibes. This really reminded me of Sally Rooney off the bat. This is about a family of 4 sisters. One of them passes away and the 3 of them are coming together again because of that, which I'm wondering if this is going to be inspired by Little Women at all. I don't think so, but I just really got along with the writing style. It was a prologue that is running through all 4 of the sisters. Very, very short cliff notes, what do you need to know about them quickly, and we've already been introduced to which of the sisters is going to have died just in that prologue, which really surprised me. It was oh, and she was in a sorority and she was very kind and she also died at 27, and it's oh, okay. Immediate great vibes. I want to read this soon. Opposite side of the spectrum, My Darlings by Maurice Still. This was a book that was gifted to me as a blind date with a book, so a person picked up a blind date with a book and gave me that. So I had never heard of this book, and it has a low average rating on Goodreads. I wanted to at least give it a shot before I got rid of it. This is about a woman who's PTO president and everything, and she's also a serial killer. And the very first chapter is only a couple pages long. The print's pretty big in this book as well, but it was one of her victims being out on a run, and then she is drowned somehow. And then we flip over to the main character, Eloise, who is the serial killer, watching the news report of her latest victim, the one who we just saw the perspective from, being oh no, there's another death in town. And just the way that it was written, I'm I'm not going to get along with this. And also, in the acknowledgements, there was a comma splice. I'm okay. You're Invited did not feel that different from My Darlings, but I do have a better vibe about this one, even though this also does not have a great average rating. This is set in Sri Lanka at a destination wedding, though I do think the people who are there are actually Sri Lankan. They don't live there normally. The main character went to the wedding of her ex-best friend and her ex-boyfriend and was trying to stop it. The first chapter starts with the main character trying to leave the resort. She's got like bloody knuckles, and apparently the bride is missing. I have a friend who has read this and did not love it, but didn't hate it. I do think I got a better vibe off of this than the other thriller. And the last one, I read the digital sample of All the Colors of the Dark. I feel like I have a couple books like that where it's like, oh, we know that this person dies, and then working around that. It's set in, I think, the 60s, and there's a boy, he grew up with an eye patch because he doesn't have one of his eyes, and he's obsessed with pirates, and he ends up being killed. Felt very neutral towards that one. So of these, My Darlings was my least favorite. This is probably number 4. I think this is probably a little bit less of a good vibe. And then All the Colors of the Dark and Blue Sisters absolutely on top. Group 2 is going to be Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr, Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren, When the World Tips Over by Jandy Nelson, The God of the Woods by Liz Moore, and The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. I put the camera in such a way so that I have to duck to be seen. Let's go through them. Okay, let's flip them over. Cloud Cuckoo Land. I've been told this book is weird, and it definitely lived up to that reputation. I had like 2 of these books were like talking about books at the beginning. So this seems to be inspired by, I don't know if it's a real thing or not, Aristophanes' The Birds, 414 BCE. It's like talking about this story that was written a long time ago called Cloud Cuckoo Land. There's like multiple timelines going on where in Constantinople in the 15th century, there's a girl who seems to be like locked in a room with like fancy technology. There's a lot going on. I'm interested, but again, this is like a big brain power book. Love in Other Words started out pretty normal. This had a prologue that was about how her parents loved each other very much, and then her mom died of cancer and left behind this list of things that she wanted her dad to keep in mind while raising her. And one of the things was like, hey, if she ever like feels numbed out, you should go and take a trip. And so they got this house north of San Francisco, and next door was like the guy that was like the love of her life. When the World Tips Over, immediately a little bit weird. So this is an author that I have given 5 stars and 1 star to before. So this is like a big who knows. And this was a really anticipated release that nobody was talking about. This was in development for like 10 years and used to have a different title and everything. And the beginning of this is about a girl who her best friend since she was very little basically stops talking to her after he gets a girlfriend, like interacting with him at school, and he's not wanting to talk to her. But we know that there's like going to be a car accident and a rainbow haired girl. There's also 6 different epigraphs, which I thought was kind of indecisive. I didn't feel 100% great about this one, but not terrible. God of the Woods, I actually do think I've read the first like couple pages of this, so I flipped forward a little bit and read a little bit more. This is set in the 70s and it's at a camp, and the owner of the camp's daughter goes missing in the middle of the night and they're trying to find it. So it feels pretty similar to All the Colors of the Dark, and this came out the same year and had a similar type synopsis. Neutrally positive. Nothing super stuck out to me either way. And then A Book That Wouldn't Burn, I think my eyes started crossing a little bit, but the thing that made me intrigued was that the prologue is 2 sentences long. The first arrow hit a child. That was the opening line. We are following Levira in the first chapter. I didn't read the whole thing. It's talking about the way she was named after a weed, even though that's not the name that her parents gave her. I don't know. I didn't get like the best vibe off of that chapter, but the opening, the little prologue being 2 sentences long, did definitely intrigue me. I would say Cloud Cuckoo Land is probably the best one, even though this is confusing. It does remind me of Ted Chiang to 3, 4, 5. Nothing's as bad as my darlings yet. Then we have Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel, A Pale Light in the Black, and The Naming Song, neither of which I have on me, Reprieve by James Hahn Matson, and Brideshead Revisited. Group 3, we have Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. This is the first book in a series that is about Thomas Cromwell, and the first section was him being beaten by his father and like running to his sister, who's already married and older than him, to help him. Not strong feelings off the bat. Reprieve is about a full contact escape room, but it's really more about like the people's lives outside of the escape room, from what I've heard. Actually, the opening was like an interview. That's an interesting thing that I like in books usually. It's like an actual transcript. Somebody in the escape room was being held at knife point, and also somebody has run away who saw everything that happened. That same person that ran away, we flip back in time to her going to her father's funeral and reading Pet Sematary at it, and people like kind of judging her for that. Sure, interesting enough. I'm positive. This is Brideshead Revisited. Can't find like the edition of this or when this book is from, but while I liked the writing style of it, I could not pay attention to it because there is something up with the typeface. I don't know if you can see it, but if you look closely, the letters are not like even. They are going like up and down. They're not like even across the top. Like the L's go below where the A's finish. Book of the Month did launch this as one of their centennial editions, and I wanted that. I think I'm going to replace this old copy with that because there's no way I'm reading this font that makes me think I'm like tripping. It's giving me almost vertigo. The other two books were A Pale Light in the Black. It's a sci-fi where there's like this annual competition that people can enter. I don't really know what the competition is. Is it a race or something? But we know that this team lost last year and they're trying to win this year, but somebody seems to be after them. And also they are inspired by the Coast Guard, but for space. Something about the writing style here did not click with me. I don't think that this is a book I'm going to love. It's also available on Kindle Unlimited if you're a Kindle Unlimited person. And then the last one was The Naming Song by Jedediah Barry, which is about some like word committee or something. There are these people who they are the ones who name things. The first chapter was like she delivered the word echo and then described all the things that were like echoing and like people absorbing the word echo, which I think is an interesting setup. I have liked books that are kind of written like that before. I think that's really up to how the plot and like what the metaphor goes, if that's going to be for me. But like that was a book I was definitely thinking about getting rid of that I did not have a negative experience with. So I think I'm going to keep that one. But like, how would I rank them? I don't even want to put Brideshead Revisited in there because I could not pay attention to the text. I would say of the other four, Reprieve was probably number 1, and then The Naming Song, and then Wolf Hall, and then A Pale Light in the Black was my least favorite. Now we're going to look at Velocity Weapon by Megan O'Keefe, which I do not have on me, The Bird Artist by Howard Norman, Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid, The Invisible Library by Genevieve Cogman, and The Jane Austen Society by Natalie Jenner. So it's the next day, just got back from the gym, and I was like, okay, we'll be sweaty for a little bit longer sitting outside because it is so humid out. First book I sampled was Velocity Weapon by Megan O'Keefe, which is the first in the Protectorate or something series. It's a sci-fi series that like just saw the cover and like got a good vibe off of. Like honestly, I think I had seen maybe one person review it very highly. I didn't know a whole lot about it. And I really don't want to be starting a new series, but it follows a brother and a sister who are in this like sci-fi world. I don't remember a whole lot about the synopsis. The writing style of the beginning I was liking. Our main character has been in some sort of like firefight. She is waking up from intensive care. She's like, all the gunk that was on my eyes from like this specific technology, and then like she notices that like part of her leg is missing or whatever. And it was just written pretty like irreverently, and I thought that that was fun. So I think that was my favorite of the openings that I read in this one. The bird artist, the opening paragraph mentions that the main character is a person who lives in a lighthouse who paints and draws birds and stuff like that, but that he also murdered the previous lighthouse keeper. And that's kind of the only remarkable thing that happened in the opening. It then promptly skips back to his childhood when he starts drawing birds. That first paragraph like is intriguing, and the rest of it wasn't necessarily, but I wasn't bothered by the writing style or anything, so it's whatever. Then we have Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is one of her pre-Evelyn Hugo books. I've read like half of those. I've read all of her Evelyn Hugo and since. I think this would be my third of her before those. And this is about a woman who like doesn't really know what she wants to do with her life. She like goes to a party or something like that, and there are two different people who offer to drive her home, and we follow two timelines of her life that is just different based on who she decided to go home with. And in the first chapter, she's moving back from New York after being there for 9 months and going back to LA, which she doesn't really have a place that she's called home. She's like moved all over the country all these times, and she's like comforting this woman who is afraid of the plane. Find TJR's writing style really easy on the eyes. And I'll say I was kind of distracted while reading this group of books. I just couldn't, like, I was thinking about other things while reading. And this one I'm like, I felt like pretty clear on, but like, I don't think that that opening excited me at all. Honestly, I feel like it was a pretty bland and safe way to open a book. Then we have The Invisible Library, which it turns out I don't know what the hell this book is about because it opens up with this woman who is a librarian. Turns out she's like a spy. They actually go into alternate dimensions to get like special magical manuscripts, which seems really fun. I feel like this type of book, though, never ends up being a favorite of mine. It feels fun, and something that I'm really surprised by. This was actually the book when I did my bracket where I asked people like what books on my TBR I should get rid of. This was the book that the most people mentioned. People had mixed feelings on this one. Some people told me to read it, and some people told me not to read it. It's the first in a series, which makes me say I don't want to, but that like seems at least like it would be like a fun romp. This one I was gifted by a family member who had not read it, and I did not have this on my list or anything. Didn't know anything about it. Just I think it was like a Barnes & Noble Book of the Year or something like that. This one was blind date with the book as a gift. So the person didn't know anything about that book either. And then there's the Jane Austen Society by Natalie Jenner. I got this from a little free library a while ago. This one is set in the 1940s, which I've been reading so much like World War II fiction lately, which not normally what I'm reading. This is set in the town that Jane Austen lived in the 40s. There's no like monuments to Jane Austen there. Some people are bonding over a love of Jane Austen. I also know this is the first in the series. I don't know how connected they are because I don't think they're all named the Jane Austen whatever. Easy reading first chapter. A man who lives in that town is chilling, and a American woman comes up to him and is like, "Hi, I'm trying to find Jane Austen's house." And he's like, "Yeah, well, here's the graveyard. This is her mom and her sister, and that's the house over there." And he tells her about it, and she's like, "Wow, nobody was telling me all that stuff in London," kind of being like, why is nobody talking about her anymore? He hasn't read the books, she has, and she loves them. I'm gonna tell you right now, I love books about writers. I don't love books about books. I picked this up from a little free library, like at the beginning of my little free library journey. And then like I've never had an inkling to read it, but for the Buzzwordathon and the Buzz Cover Challenge in 1 month, I will be able to read this. The buzzword for 1 month is like groups and societies and that sort of thing. So the word society works. And also damage on the cover, like printed on it. And the damage on the right edge of it is printed on the book. How would I rank these? Bird Artist at the bottom, then the Jane Austen Society, Maybe in Another Life. Honestly, I don't think that these were too different from each other. And then Invisible Library on top of those, and Velocity Weapon was the best one. Our second to last group is The Edible Woman by Margaret Atwood, Star Eater by Kirsten Hall, Sleeping Beauties by Stephen King, Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov, and The Talisman, also by Stephen King, which I do not have on me. I think this is getting harder as we go along. Like, I'm finding it more difficult to like pick out anything like good or bad about these, or maybe I'm just feeling meh about them. Edible Woman, I know this is about a woman who gets engaged and loses her appetite. It kicks off with her and her roommate is hungover after going to a party of only dentists, and she was tired of talking to them. And they were already talking about like eating and stuff in there. So a lot of food metaphor going to be happening in this one. Didn't feel really any way about this one. Star Eater by Kirsten Hall. This is a very lowly rated fantasy standalone that is about a girl who is part of some sort of sisterhood where they want her to like further their group. So they want her to get pregnant and she just wants to escape. The opening section of this is they're like on a pilgrimage or something. They're trying to like bless all the farmers in the area because they need food. The writing style was working for me in a way that like I wasn't expecting from this. It just was subtly starting to talk about whatever the magic in this, talking about a lace. And I just want to say, there's so many books that I read for this that had a dramatis personae at the front. This one did, and so did our next one. And like several of the ones in the last section I did had as well. This is Sleeping Beauties by Stephen King and Owen King. And this is a book that was used that was given to me in a just group of Stephen King books. And this inside of this book is covered in dog hair. I do not have a dog. I've never had a dog. And I'm like, I don't want to get allergic from a book that I'm also not like caring about anyway. So I might just like put this in a little free library or something. It was really hard to even get any of them out of there. Like they were just clinging to the pages and it's like sticking out and everything. I don't know if it's in the whole book, but it was definitely in the front. This is on my 20 books to read in 2026 because I try to put 4 TBR veterans on there. And as we're going back, we're getting older and older in this challenge. This is one that people actually told me in my bracket challenge that I wouldn't like. This is about women who go to sleep in like cocoons and stuff like that. And they can't figure out what's wrong with them. And in the opening section was set at a women's prison and 2 women are talking to each other. Didn't care yet. We also had Lolita. I mean, it's Lolita. What can I tell you? I already know like the opening lines of this book because that's very famous. I knew about this, that this has a very like beautiful writing style and that makes it more creepy. I've always been determined to at least try this. I will never hold myself to finishing it if I can't. It's the same thing as a couple of these books where the paragraph is more about what the book is about and then it skips back to the beginning of his life and he's talking about how like, oh, I didn't have any weird sexual proclivities when I was a child until I met this person. And it's already like hinting to the fact that like Lolita is not the only person that this has happened to. Obviously, this is like going to be an absolutely disgusting book in a way that I think could be important to read. I don't know if I can actually handle it. The last book was The Talisman, which is another Stephen King book, and we'll have like 3 or 4 more to get through. This is the first in a series that was written by Stephen King and Peter Straub, and 1 book was published a decade, and the 3rd book is coming out this year, and it is about a boy named Jack. It's in the 80s. His mom gets sick, or like his mom like disappears or something, and he has to like go into a magical world to help her or find her or something. I read like the first chapter or something, and it's him and the mom like moving into a new place, and apparently she's a former actress. I didn't feel very strongly about the 2 Stephen King books or the Margaret Atwood books, and I probably think I liked a little bit better. I would say this would probably be number 2, and number 1 would be Star Eater, which is surprising because Star Eater has such a low rating, and I kind of want to know why now. And our final group of books, I do not have any of them. We have If It Bleeds by Stephen King, Revival, also by Stephen King, Lisey's Story, also by Stephen King, The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins, and How to Be a Heroine. Okay, so I've read the last 5 books, first chapters. The first of which was If It Bleeds, which is a collection of 4 bound novellas. I know nothing about any of them, and I just sampled the first of the novellas because that's what the thing has. It was about a kid getting a birthday card from his boss. Like, he works at like a corner shop or something like that, and he gets like a scratch off ticket from his boss, and his dad is like, gives you $1 scratch off ticket. Like, this guy could just like pay you a good wage or whatever. And the kid's like, well, I like the scratch off. But there was nothing like wrong with it. I don't think that I need to read 4 novellas. Then there was Lisi's story. So the opening bit of that book says how to say her name. That's pretty different from, I think, his other stuff. It's about a woman whose husband was a very famous author who won like the Pulitzer and the National Book Award. And he has passed away, and she's trying to deal with that. There's more speculative element to that, but that's what that part was about. Of the Stephen King samples, that one was my favorite. And then there's The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins, which is supposed to be one of the books that most shaped like gothic fiction and mystery fiction. It's like one of the first like English mystery novels properly. Interestingly opens up with a note that's saying this book is going to be narrated by multiple people, because like it's written as like an account. So like multiple people are giving their account of what happened. It's like a man who's an artist like comes across this woman in white on the road. And I don't really know what happens other than that. But the fact that it opens with like, we're going to all take turns writing our part of the story, I thought was kind of interesting. But on the other hand, it reminds me of Dracula, which is not a book that I liked. And then the last one was How to Be a Heroine, which I realized I actually have read this like opening chapter before. And it's about a woman who's in her 30s who has always loved like classic literature and everything. And she's talking to her friend about who would you rather be, Cathy Earnshaw or Jane Eyre. She says Cathy Earnshaw and her friend says Jane Eyre. And she realizes that her friend is totally right. You should want to be Jane Eyre, not Cathy. And as a fan of Jane Eyre, not a huge fan of Wuthering Heights, I agree. That opening interested me a lot. I know I said earlier I don't really like books about books, but I like books about writing. I feel like this could be an interesting memoir. I do agree with the fact that I probably should read more books that this book is going to be talking about, because this is like her going back and revisiting all her favorite like classic heroines and like addressing them with new eyes. I think that could be told in an interesting way. That doesn't mean it will, but I am interested. I think I want to read like 1 or 2 more books that are referenced in that. Like I have A Room with a View, which I know is in there. Did I talk about Revival? I skipped over Revival. Revival is about like a new wave priest or something who comes to town, and like all the town gets shaken up by that. That synopsis does not interest me at all. That one was just talking about like how a kid is the youngest in the family and talking about like their birthday ritual. Like it had nothing to do with what the book is going to be about. That didn't really stand out to me. But I will say, Lisi's story actually referenced a town that I am going to be visiting soon. So I was like, okay, that's a sign. I definitely have to keep that one. How to Be a Heroine was number 1. I'd say Lisi's story was number 2. So now we finish all the books. Let's figure out which ones I'm going to get rid of. Alrighty, after all that, what am I going to be getting rid of? I went into this hoping to get rid of 5 books. I don't know that I'm fully going to get there. I'm going to be getting rid of the 2 books that were at the very bottom of my ranking. My Darlings was the least favorite opening I read of all of these books. I don't think that this book is going to be well written, and it doesn't sound like something I would have picked up myself anyway. And that's one of the criteria that I wanted to work on when culling my TBR in this way. Would I have added this to my TBR now, having read the opening section? This book in particular came across as being written in a juvenile way and a type of thriller that I wouldn't really be that into. It's got like a 3.6-ish on Goodreads, and thrillers aren't something that I have been giving high ratings to lately anyway, so I think I'm going to be getting rid of this. And my second least favorite opening was A Pale Light in the Black by KB Wagers. Again, I thought the opening chapter was a little bit juvenile or stilted. It did not sound natural. It's the beginning of a series, and this is a hard to find enough series that in order to continue on in the series, I would have had to like purchase them anyway. So I don't feel too bad getting rid of this one. And then the 3 books that I am considering removing from my TBR are Stephen King books. So I have read a good amount of Stephen King. I think I've read around 10 Stephen King books, and I've just been given a whole lot of like more obscure ones. And there's a handful that I don't think need to be priorities for me in terms of Stephen King. King's bibliography, and if I really want them back, like I can always get them again. I think I'm going to be getting rid of If It Bleeds. I don't need a long novella collection in my life. One of the stories in here was like a Holly Gibney story, and like I didn't love The Outsider. I don't have an incentive to start another installment in this, especially when it's a novella, so I'm probably gonna like it less. Whatever the novella that this opened with, I found this opening to be super bland. In fact, this opening and the next opening that I'm gonna talk about felt almost identical. And I was just like, I am not interested. I don't really have a reason to care. And I've also seen other people that I trust who like Stephen King not love this collection to begin with. I am also fairly confident that I want to get rid of Revival, also by Stephen King. The synopsis of this book reminds me vaguely of Salem's Lot, which was not a Stephen King that I particularly cared for. These two first chapters are starting with like a young boy describing something that happened in their childhood that is fairly mundane. So it didn't really grab my attention. Neither of these are things that I would have picked up in Stephen King's bibliography. And then I'm unsure if I'm going to remove Sleeping Beauties from my regular TBR, because this was the book that I chose for my 20 in 2026. When I could have instead picked something like Lisey's story that I was more interested in. I just decided to pick the intimidating one to try to force myself to read it. I definitely want to get rid of this copy because of the pet hair that is in it. I don't know if you can see it. I am allergic to a lot of pets, so I definitely don't want this biohazard in my house. So at the very, very least, I am getting rid of this copy, and either I will pick this book up on audiobook later in the year and continue to keep it on my 20 and 26, or I will swap it out for a different Stephen King that I still own that I've had for a while, so probably Lisey's story. But this one also, like, just that first section, again, it didn't immediately grab my interest, and for like such a long book, all 5 of the books that I have here are books that I physically own that are not on my digital TBR, and I feel like that's a pretty good metric of if I want to keep the books or not. And reading these sampler chapters kind of affirmed, no, I don't think I need to read these books. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was entertaining and maybe introduced you to some books that you might be interested in or not interested in. And I challenge you all to do a similar thing if you're someone like me who has a lot of TBR that you want to get through. And if you don't have anything to say, why not leave me a butterfly emoji? If you'd like to find me anywhere else on the internet, you can find me at the links in the description, including a giveaway that I'm doing for Libro FM audiobooks this summer. If you enter, you have a very, very good chance of winning one of my favorite audiobooks of all time. And if you'd like to keep watching my videos, I would love it if you would subscribe. So thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.